What's going on, everyone? Welcome to The Plot Strikes Back. Nick here to talk about Yellowstone Season 6, Episode 12, titled Counting Coup. There will be spoilers in case you haven't watched, but in case you have, let's go ahead and jump right in. The things we're going to discuss in this video involve the relationship between Colby and Teeter, Rip and Beth's leadership, the conflict between law enforcement and Jamie Dutton, and ending with some final thoughts in Kayce's conflict with Grant. This episode paints a heavy and somber picture, blending intense personal moments with some shocking developments. Colby's confession of love to Teeter adds a touching, albeit heartbreaking layer to the episode, especially with his sudden and tragic death. The sequence where Colby saves Carter and gets fatally injured feels gut-wrenching and raw. It reminds viewers of the dangers of ranch life, which often gets overshadowed by the show's focus on family drama and power struggles. His death was unexpected, and while it might feel unnecessary, it serves as a sobering reminder of the risks involved in the way of life. It's an unnecessary tragic trope where Colby's death serves as a reminder of the fragility of life itself and the harsh realities of ranching and cowboying. It also fits into the trope where a character's demise galvanizes others, particularly young Carter, Beth, and Rip, to reflect on the unpredictability of their lives. This echoes the idea that death is not always tied to grand, dramatic events, but can stem from everyday dangers. Colby's death raises ethical questions about the inherent risks of ranch life. Was it fair to place Carter in a position where Colby needed to intervene? It also reflects on the ethics of the Dutton lifestyle, where they value loyalty and bravery, which is the cost of their own people is often steep. Was it a necessary sacrifice for the show itself? Beth's reaction with her moment with Carter and later with Rip showcases her softer side, which is rarely seen amid her usual hard-edged demeanor. The scene where she comforts Carter, emphasizing Colby's sacrifice and the importance of honoring it, carries emotional weight and helps the audience process the loss. Rip's responsibility for the fallout is characteristic of his role as the ranch's anchor, especially now that John Dutton is no longer with us. Calling Ryan down south in the 4-6s and dealing with the aftermath shows his stoicism and dedication to the Duttons and the ranch. The lighter moment with Beth pouring him a drink after such a tragic event offers a brief reprieve, humanizing the relationship even in darker times. I totally understand why he would get a drink and then throw it into the fire and have a little fireball, and that eased some tension, but he still holds it within himself. It's this man versus himself conflict where all of our characters here, Rip, Beth, and Kayce, all grapple with internal struggles. Rip takes responsibility for Colby's death despite it being an accident. And Beth uses humor and warmth to process grief here. And then meanwhile, as we see later, Kayce faces his dual role as a protector and an avenger. These actions demonstrate how internal conflict shapes external behavior. Her insistence of honoring Colby's sacrifice reflects her belief in the importance of respect and loyalty within the family. This contrasts with her usual cutthroat approach, suggesting her ethics are deeply tied to the family's inner circle, even if she is ruthless with outsiders. Detective Dillard, Jamie, and the evidence that we see here. Jamie is shredding evidence while refusing to cooperate with Detective Dillard in the beginning of the episode, and it sets the stage for escalating tension. It's classic Jamie. We've seen it tons of times before in this entire show. It's desperation wrapped in arrogance. And Kayce's reaction feels like a turning point here, which is great to see. His step on the gas moment for Detective Dillard is a great attitude, signaling his growing decisiveness and willingness to take action, especially when we see Kayce get involved with Grant Horton. There's a thin line between law and order here, where Detective Dillard and Jamie's confrontation highlights a trope where Jamie is desperate to protect himself by shredding the evidence, and it shows how easily those in power can manipulate justice. This theme is central to Yellowstone, where morality often takes a back seat to survival and self-preservation. And we can see again that Jamie's corruption is still persistent. By shredding the evidence, it epitomizes the moral decay that the power that he brings within his AG role. It shows how far he's strayed from ethical governance, and it reinforces his role as the series' morally compromised antagonist. Now, getting to my favorite part of the entire episode here, we talk about the title, Counting Coup. It refers to a practice among some indigenous peoples of North America, particularly the Plains tribes, where warriors would show bravery and skill in battle by touching an enemy with a hand, stick, or coup stick rather than killing them. The act was a symbolic victory, demonstrating courage, honor, and dominance without resorting to lethal violence. In the context of our episode here, the title alludes to Kayce's confrontation with Grant Horton. Kayce holds Grant's daughter at gunpoint and threatens him, asserting dominance and control without killing anyone. This mirrors the idea of counting coup, establishing power and making a statement without resorting to fatal force. The title also ties themes of morality and restraint, and Kayce's action here, while aggressive, stopped short of crossing a line that would make him irredeemable. It reflects his calculated approach by protecting his family and values while still walking a morally ambiguous path. It's a hero's burden trope, which, yes, Kayce embodies the reluctant hero, often caught between his family legacies and his own moral compass. His actions in this episode, while holding Grant's daughter at gunpoint in the back seat, demonstrate his willingness to embrace a darker method to protect his family, and it really highlights the emotional toll of his choices when he says that he knows what to do when he calls up Kate on the phone. This ties into another Western trope of the cowboy life as a flawed hero, even if it erodes their soul. And throughout the entirety of the Yellowstone series, I think Kayce has been a very moral person. However, the actions at the soccer game do blur the line between justice and vengeance. While Kayce's actions are effective, it does raise questions about the cost of such methods. Is it really ethical to threaten a child to send a message even if the ends justify the means? Sure, it does tie into the Yellowstone theme throughout the entire series where morality is sacrificed for family and survival, especially for the Duttons. It does present us, the viewers, with a moral dilemma. Are Kayce's actions justifiable for the given stakes? What would have happened if Kayce blew the brains out of Grant in the car, leaving his daughter there, screaming and not knowing what to do? And I think here with the title of this episode and Kayce's involvement, it's symbolic of the broader battles in Yellowstone, where many conflicts are about asserting dominance in politics, business, or personal relationships without necessarily resorting to direct destruction. The ending with Kayce confronting Grant at his daughter's soccer game is kind of wild. It's intense, and I love it to a degree, but it's also, yes, the juxtaposition of Grant's seemingly wholesome father moment with Kayce's ruthless action adds complexity. Do we really believe that Grant's a likable guy and a good father? Because we really know what he's done here. He's responsible for the death of John Dutton, the governor of Montana. And Kayce holding Grant's daughter at gunpoint is asserting dominance, yes, as stated, and takes part of Grant's soul by pistol whacking him in the back of the head. It's a cultural significance of counting coup. It's a symbolic victory over an enemy without taking their life. I personally love the anti-hero trope within comics or shows, but this moment blurs the line between being a hero and anti-hero, which is a theme we've seen in Yellowstone time and time again. There's a part of me that really enjoys the arc of Kayce here in this season, especially in part 2, because he's showing that he's willing to do whatever it takes to protect his family. His father is no longer in the picture, and he's really stepping up to be his father, to take the reins, to step in John Dutton's boots and protect his family's name. And I get it, it does raise the question about his morality and the cost of his choices, which we'll see here in the finale. Some of my takeaways from this episode are in the power dynamics and control. Much of this episode revolves around asserting power, Kayce over Grant, Detective Dillard over Jamie, Rip over the ranch and crew. The methods vary, but the underlying theme is consistent, which is control is survival. Even the title, Counting Coup, reinforces this, as the Duttons are not simply fighting to win battles, they're striving to maintain dominance in a world where their power is fleeting, as Beth states in the previous episode. We've got family loyalty versus personal morality. The actions of Kayce exemplify how loyalty to family can force individuals to compromise their morals, but his willingness to threaten an innocent child juxtaposed with his role as a father and husband adds complexity to his character that we really haven't seen yet, which is also great for character growth. We've got grief and resilience. Colby's death impacts multiple characters, from Beth's quiet leadership to Rick's stoic acceptance. It exemplifies that while grief is inevitable, resilience is what allows the family to endure. The balance of vulnerability and strength is a hallmark of the Yellowstone series. Much like where people would only want to be happy and never be sad, being sad is inevitable, and it's a part about being sad that shows resilience as humans and what we can endure and grow and live through. And we do see fragility of the justice system here. Detective Dillard's inability to make progress with Jamie highlights the fragility of justice in this episode, especially when Kayce is literally spelling it out for Detective Dillard here. We've seen over the course of this entire series where the Duttons and their respective allies constantly manipulate or subvert the law, and it reinforces the show's cynicism about institutional power here. My final thoughts about this episode. It's a bit of a microcosm for the show's broader themes: family, power, loyalty, and the cost of survival. The morality and ethics of this character remain murky, inviting us to question what we would do in similar situations. And by trying to balance intense drama with moments of levity and reflection, the show continues to challenge conventional notions of what's right and wrong. With Colby's death and the mounting tension between the Duttons, law enforcement, and their enemies, while the risks of cowboying adds realism, some of us might feel that the death of Colby was just unnecessary and poorly timed. And I think Kayce's arc dominates the narrative here, and it makes him the linchpin for this episode's intensity and drives the story and the finale towards an inevitable conflict. A couple questions I have for you as the audience and a viewer of my show here. What do you think about Kayce's actions? Did he go too far? Knowing what we know about Kayce's life and what he's had to go through, especially with John Dutton being killed, his father, would you have done the same thing? Does it show growth or improvement or add to his character arc and development? Or do you think it's too far? What do you think about Colby dying, especially after he announces that he loves Teeter, which is a nice moment, and I kind of hoped it happened sooner, but after it happens, he's dead. And it was a sacrifice, and he was trying to be a hero to protect Carter. Did we think that he could have been able to protect Carter and maybe just get injured and not die? I think it was just a needless death. We have someone else that died on the show that didn't need to die, especially when we already know that cowboying comes with risks, especially in the beginning of part 2 here, where we see that the crew in the 4-6s camped out on a rattlesnake nest. But what did you all think about this episode? Did you like it? Did you think that the episode was a little too somber in the beginning? Did you like that it ended in a heavy manner, or did you think that it was too much? Let me know in the comment section below. Be sure to tune in next week as I cover the season finale. I'm expecting some big drama, some deaths, some bloodshed, and hopefully not too many people die, but I expect this to be sad in some regard. So I'm looking forward to it, and I hope you all are too. I'll catch you next time here on The Plot Strikes Back. Cheers, everyone.